Hello dear viewer, and welcome to your favorite program, Models of Faith, with me, your host, Sister Christine. We thank the Lord each and every day for giving us examples, iconic people in the church who help us to grow in our Christian faith. And today we thank the Lord because we have a special guest who is going to introduce herself. And then after her introduction, we'll get to know whom are we discussing about today. So, sister, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And kindly introduce yourself to the viewers so that they get to know who you are.
I am Sister Therese Buglietti. I'm a missionary sister of the Precious Blood, and I've been a missionary sister now for over 50 years.
Wow.
And I'm happy to be here.
You are most welcome. Dear viewer, as you have heard, today we have in our studios Sister Therese. And surprisingly, today we are also going to discuss about Saint Therese of the Child Jesus. Just as she has said, her name is Therese. She's inclined to Saint Therese of the Child Jesus. So I believe we are going to learn much more of who Saint Therese of the Child Jesus is. So, sister, particularly, who is Saint Therese of the Child Jesus?
Okay, she is a saint of the 19th century. She was born in France, in Lisieux, France, of very pious parents, and she was the last born of 5 siblings. She had 4 other sisters. She was the last born, and she had a love of God from her youth. She really loved God, and had a desire to serve Him and to spread love of Him to other people.
I understand that just at a tender age, she had this great devotion to God. How did it begin?
I think it began within the family circle. Her mother and father were very religious, and they brought their children up to love God and to serve God and to realize God's love for them. I think this is where it started, within the family itself.
And what about the parents? Because they have these, it is written that they were once religious, or how was it about them?
Yes, I think what happened is the father, I think, wanted to be a priest, but due to circumstances he wasn't able. And the mother had entered the convent, but due to poor health, she was advised that it would be better if she would remain in the world. And they met and they got married. So they had this deep, deep faith within themselves, which they shared with their children.
That's so interesting, because after the father and mother having that desire to serve the Lord in the church, it happened that all their daughters joined the convent.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
4 of them, the Carmelites, the Calcite Carmelites, and one became a visitation sister.
Who are the 4 who entered the Carmelites and who went to the visitation?
The oldest was Pauline, and then the second oldest was Marie, and there was Celine, and then of course Therese.
Therese. Which Carmelite order was it?
It was the Carmelite, the Decalcite Carmelites, the Reformed Saint Therese of Avila's Reformation, and it was in Lisieux, in their
France, Lisieux.
Yeah.
Saint Therese, being a devout girl, a young woman, when did she think of joining religious life?
I think she felt the call, probably with her sisters joining. I think she wanted. She visited them. She saw what the life was like, and although she was very young, she wanted to enter, and she overcame many obstacles in order to enter at the age of 15.
And I understand that her mother passed on when she was still young.
She was still quite young, yes.
And then how was her upbringing after that? Because I can imagine the trauma of losing a mother when she was still young, and then her growing up and then wanting to join the convent.
What happened after the mother died, she chose her older sister Pauline as her mother. And Celine, the one that was in between, chose Marie as to be their mother. So the mothering took place by her older sister.
So the sisters acted as mother
Yes.
to each and every one of them. Oh, that's a good way of living as a family.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, then how did it go with the father being now the only person remaining as a parent?
That I don't know for sure. I think because of the older daughters being there, they took on the role of the mother. So with his faith, I mean, he accepted what happened with his faith. And I guess he carried on the best he could.
Okay. The church calls St. Teresa of the Child Jesus the Little Flower. How did it come about?
Okay. The idea of the Little Flower was that before she died, she had written in her autobiography that she would spend her heaven, doing good on earth, like showering the earth with the flowers of blessings. So I think that's where the name came from, the Little Flower. Also, the littleness was the idea that she saw herself always as a child of God. God was her father. So she had this simplicity about her, childlike devotion to the Father and to Jesus.
Okay. What about her prayer life in the community, in the convent?
According to her, what I read in her autobiography, she had a very deep relationship with the Lord, and it was more like a conversation. She offered everything she did to him. So her whole life was an incessant prayer to the Father. Whatever was asked of her, what little sacrifices that was demanded of her, she did out of love for the Lord, and that was her prayer. Her whole life was a prayer, I would say.
It falls back into something like incessant worship for the missionary sisters of the Precious Blood?
Yes.
How is it?
It's very similar. I know when I entered, I realized, that a lot of our inner spirit is much like St. Teresa's because of this, God is our Father, I am His child, and her childlike love of the Father. Being missionaries, and she's a patron of the missionaries because her whole life was spent for trying to spread God's love, and so she prayed for missionaries. And also our inner spirit that says, incessant worship of God. Our whole life should be worshiping God. She's our model, really, our model that this is how we can live it, by offering the little things that are part of our life as a sacrifice to God, in love, doing it in love, not because we have to do it, but because we want to do it, and we want to show our love to the Lord by little things. She's the saint, I think, that helps the ordinary people say, I can be a saint, because she did the little things extraordinarily well. She did them for the Lord, and it was little things like being splashed in the face when they were washing, offering that up to God as in love, not complaining about these things, offering it and worshiping God in little ways. And we as human beings with our weaknesses, she's a model for us and an encouragement that no matter what state of life we are, we can all become saints, sure, like she did. If we just look at our life and say, today I give it to God, and whatever happens today is for the glory and honor of God.
It's a human tendency that when somebody does something wrong to us, we tend to make a huge hullabaloo on it. Mm-hmm. But from St. Teresa's way of living, for sure, she's teaching us to be patient with the sufferings which we go through. Mm-hmm. As you have said, there is this sister who kept on splashing dirty water on her, mm-hmm, but she never took it personally. Yeah. She gave it to the Lord in prayer. Yeah. For sure, St. Teresa is a great example to us, yes, of patience in suffering. Yes. Now, I understand that St. Teresa had a problem with her health. Yes. How did it happen? Did she join when she was sick, or? No,
she was 15, she was quite healthy, relatively healthy when she entered. But due to the life of austerity of the Carmelites at the time, their fasting, also at that time, they didn't have central heating, and France can be very cold in the winter. They wore sandals. They didn't have the means, I think, to really remain healthy. So if somebody got a cold and it wasn't really treated well and so on, it was very easy then to contact such a thing as TB, tuberculosis. And that's what happened to her. she contacted tuberculosis, and in those days there was no cure. So it was a death sentence. Once you had tuberculosis, you knew you were going to die. It was just a matter of time.
Then she really deserves to be a saint, because I can imagine having tuberculosis and this sister also splashing this dirty water on her without saying anything. For sure, that is real grace. And we thank the Lord for the gift of Saint Therese in the church to show us this good example. And as we read her autobiography, we hear that she devoted herself more to prayer. Why did she find it so easy to do it like that?
I just don't, because of her love of the Father, her love of Jesus. You know, she said it every day. She would say, "Jesus, I love you," and she said it brought her closer to the Lord. She prayed in spite of the fact that most of her religious life was in desolation, meaning she did not feel God's presence within her. But she persevered. I like in her autobiography, she compares herself to a toy that the baby Jesus plays with and then discards in it like a little ball, and it rolls into the corner. But the ball is ready there to be picked up again. So for her prayer life was that she was that little ball waiting to be picked up again. And if the child ignored the ball, it didn't matter. The ball was there for the child. So that's how she overcame her desolation, the time of not really feeling God within her or feeling God's presence. And this lasted almost for her whole religious life. Yeah.
How long did she live?
Well, she entered at 14 and she died at 24. So 9 years.
9 years. But 9 worthy years of a good example to us as human beings, for sure. I admire also when she says that for her, God is everything. So it's like she dedicated each and every second of her life with this saying that you say. She kept on saying, "Jesus, I love you, Jesus, I love you." And she found that her saying, "Jesus, I love you," is being connected with the Father. And dear viewer, being there also as a Christian, you can also make it a habit for yourself also to call Christ and let Christ be your love each and every time, because it is out of the love we show to Christ, and the love Christ shows unto us is when we grow in our life. So Saint Teresa is the best example for us to follow. On the other hand, there are a number of doctors in the church, and Saint Teresa has been mentioned as one of them. How did she come to be elevated to the level of a doctor of the church?
It was, I think, due to her writing of the story of a soul, which proves within the church that this little way of hers, this simple, humble way of hers, leads people to sanctity. And so it was a confirmation that, in spite of the fact that she didn't have a theological degree, that her writings were theologically sound and they lead people to God if they're followed.
And there are a number of quotes which she wrote in the book, which really draw people closer to Christ, especially on love. What can you say about her spirituality on the love of prayer and God?
Well, for me, I feel that St. Teresa, her whole spirituality is based on our inner spirit in many ways. That God was her Father, and that she was His child, and that no matter what she did, the Father would love her. The Father loves us as children, and so even in our weaknesses, He loves us. And she had that very, very deep belief that God was a real Father, a loving, accepting Father who loved her unconditionally, and she wanted to return that love. I think that was her spirituality, her returning of that love to this Father who loved her beyond all knowing.
Being a small girl at around 15, and then you dedicate your whole self to Christ, trusting that all that she does is for the glory of God. We really need to imitate her. And also, being a religious, I feel really we are inclined to follow what Saint Teresa of the Child Jesus said and lived her life. What can you say in connection with The Inner Spirit of the Missionary Sisters of the Precious Blood, which was written by their co-foundress, Mother Paula, and the life of St. Therese of the Child Jesus.
I think that what struck me in the beginning when I entered, how close they are in spirit. This idea of God is my Father, I am His child. This idea of simplicity, of humility, of serving God out of love, of this incessant worship of God, that every day we offer our prayers, our sacrifices, our whole life to God for His glory. It's very similar. They're contemporaries. I think they lived about at the same time. They didn't know each other. But what struck me is how close they are in the spirituality. And of course, St. Therese is one of our patron saints as missionaries. So they were almost sort of a little ahead of their time in their outlook about God as Father. I think at that time, God was looked upon as a stern judge, right and wrong, and if you didn't do it right, you're going to hell. And they had a different attitude. Their attitude was God was Father, and as Father, He gives unconditional love, and He understands our weaknesses, and He's forgiving. So they were a little bit ahead of their time, I would think, in their spirituality and in their relationship with the Father.
Dear viewer, you've heard good sentiments about St. Therese of the Child Jesus. We'll just take a short break and then we'll be back to wind up our program in our next session.
Ekaristi. Sakramenti ya Ekaristi ni sakramenti ya mwili na damu ya Yesu Kristo aliye kweli katika maumbo ya mkate na divai.
Kupata Ekaristi takatifu kama skiza tuni yako, tuma neno skiza likifuatwa na nambari 738100271 kwa 811.